Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So hello, everyone. Welcome to Ask the Grant Writing Experts. I'm Dr. Meg Bouffier. You know me as the creator of your library of NIH grantsmanship courses. I have over 35 years of experience as at NIH as an applicant and intramural researcher, a staff writer, and now as a full-time NIH grant editor and mentor. And I've helped clients land over $500 million in federal funding. And I'm here to answer your questions today. So grab a cup of coffee and let's get started. So if you're attending live, it is February 7th today. You're just a reminder that you're in listen-only mode. So you can type questions in the Q&A box whenever you want. If you have a comment that you want to share, feel free to put that in the chat box. If you are watching this as a recording, just a disclaimer that everything we're saying today is true to the best of our knowledge as of February 7th, 2024, but things change really quickly in the world of grant and manuscript writing. So please do check to make sure that everything we're saying is accurate. So what are some upcoming pieces of news from the company? I think the most immediate piece of news is that we are going to start our next live stream boot camp on March 1st. So that is the first Friday in March, and we're going to do the boot camp a little differently this year based on the survey results. We have had suggestions to break it up into 4 chapters instead of doing it as a massive data dump in a half day, which some people find kind of overwhelming. So we're going to do it as 4 consecutive Fridays where I do a chapter a week, and then you can use the checklist in the virtual course as homework. So we're going to kind of like write with each other as we go through the month of March. So March 1st at 2 p.m. Eastern is going to be the kickoff with chapter 1 preparation. I think everybody on this call has access to the virtual course, so you can follow along with the virtual course. If you can't make that time, don't worry, we're going to post the recordings of the live stream in the learning management system, so that will be available to you as well. A couple of other pieces of information. I have updated 2 courses, the 4-rigor scoring criteria and optimize your funding mechanism. And those, my team has completed work on those, and they're off to the Massachusetts Medical Society being approved for CME accreditation. So we hope to release those sometime in the upcoming weeks, depending on how long they take. The other thing is I have 2 new courses coming out, probably the first one in March and the second one in April. And I will be telling you more about those as the time approaches. So, as far as NIH, there's no real news on the horizon. They're still not releasing information about any budgets. They did release something a couple of days ago saying that they continue to operate under a continuing resolution. There is scuttlebutt that NIH is likely to get a cut in their budget. So if you are awaiting a notice of award, one activity that might be useful for you is to think about if a program officer were to come back to you and say, yes, we're going to fund it, but you have to cut X% of your budget. You may want to start to think about if they come back with a request like that, where might I cut? Hopefully, knock on wood, hopefully you'll get a notice of award and not have to do that. But I suspect that there is going to be a cut, and that some people's notice of awards will be coming in with this request. So it may be a good idea to go through this exercise and think about where you might want to make cuts. Okay, so let's pause to introduce our guest. Agnella Izzo Matic is a wonderful writer. She, like me, comes from the world of, as a PhD, she was a researcher and a scientist, an active scientist, and decided to make the jump to writing. And we met at that time as she was moving into writing and just starting to launch her career. I was lucky enough for her to do some work in my company as she was getting her career off the ground, but she very quickly went off and did her own thing because she was very successful. And this is, I think, her second visit with us today. And she'll be talking about artificial intelligence in writing manuscripts and grant applications. And Agnella, you want to go ahead and take it?
Sure. Thanks very much, Meg. Glad to be back on your live stream today. And it's always a pleasure working with you from 11 plus years ago when I was starting out, and to continue to get to do it today. So I really appreciate you guys inviting me on. I am going to share some slides that I put together to go over some of the information to make sure I cover the things I want to get around to in the live stream today. Don't start meandering too much. So briefly, just about me, as Meg mentioned, I have my PhD in biomedical engineering from Northwestern University, and I was a former tenure track faculty member there, but about 11 or 12 years ago decided to make the switch into medical communications, which is what I've been doing since then in my own business. I also have a certification called Certified Medical Publication Professional from one of our professional organizations. And when I'm not at the computer doing writing and publications activities, I'm usually outside, either taking a jog or riding a bicycle, basically anything that gets me some fresh air and some exercise together. So my company focuses largely on a couple areas of medical writing. Publications, basically any peer-reviewed publication, and conference materials are the backbone of what we do every day. So they can be primary manuscripts, review articles, case reports, and anything that supports conference activities, including abstracts, posters, presentations, and sometimes intelligence reports from attending the meeting afterward. And I also help consult with publication plans in terms of where to submit articles to, getting insights into journal metrics, audiences that are available to target for your different publications activities, and literature surveillance to understand and keep on top of new developments in a particular field. Okay, so let's get into the meat of the discussion today. Artificial intelligence in grant writing and scientific writing. Well, before we get into the details of that, I wanted to take a step back and make sure that we are all kind of talking the same language here and working from the same set of assumptions. So and I will make the caveat here that I am not a researcher in artificial intelligence. And if any of you are, I apologize for, maybe oversimplifying things, and, maybe not being 100% up to the very latest in what has been published in the field. But I've done my best to try to get this to a level where most of us as scientists, I think, could, understand and appreciate what artificial intelligence is. So in the most general terms, AI is, technology that's developed by humans to try to emulate human intelligence. The machine learning approach to what we term AI is what's used for most of the tools that we call AI currently. There are other approaches, which I'm not going to get into today, but just to be aware that, it's a very big field. And, one of the other things is it is changing so quickly. So, to keep on top of everything really takes being an expert in the field. Machine learning essentially is trying to identify, patterns in the data that might not be obvious to, the naked eye, as we say. And also, I want to kind of set up this schematic on the right to understand, the machine learning and the model is one thing. But before we get to that, we as humans have to decide what type of AI we want to develop. And then we also need to select the data sources and, kind of clean the data a little bit to curate it for the training in the machine learning model. So after that data is available, then the model is trained on that data to, develop it. And then we're able to use it as an AI tool. So we as humans will prompt it with some input, and then the model will generate some output that we as humans, again, then have to, interpret what the output is and or use it in whatever cases we think it's appropriate. So some examples of AI that might be familiar to everybody here. Face ID, if you have any Apple devices and have chosen to use that, that's a type of AI tool that classifies images. DALL-E generates images when you give it a prompt of text. It's a really interesting, and it can make, if you've ever tried to play with it, it can make some very creative images out of it. ChatGPT is probably one that everybody has heard of at this point, and maybe some of you or most of you have played around with it. It is in the, as well as DALL-E is in the category of generative AI. So it's generating text in response to your prompts that you give it. It's also sometimes, or it's in the category also of large language models, or LLMs, if you've heard that acronym discussed in AI. And AlphaGo and Spotify are another couple examples that you may be aware of as well. So a couple of things before I get into what I would consider like use cases in grant applications and scientific writing, and then open it up for the chat. A couple of things I want you guys to keep in mind is that the field of AI and machine learning is evolving really quickly. New tools are coming available all the time. The tools that have already been developed are being refined regularly, and the data that they're being trained on can also be updated. And so the models, behind it can change, and the outputs might change in response to the same type of input with the evolution of the tool. I think that really most or all of the outputs that come from these tools need to be validated by humans, because there are, depending on how the models are constructed, they may or may not be, even if the answer looks authoritative when it comes out, it may or may not be a valid answer. And it also might depend on your use case too. And so I think human interpretation is critical to deciding that the AI output is useful and accurate. Another thing to keep in mind is that, especially if you are using a publicly available AI tool or something that is, a product that's sold by another company, anything that you're inputting into, like for instance, I'll give you the example of, ChatGPT and input a text into it. So let's say I copied a results text section of a study that has been completed but has not been published yet. And I input that into ChatGPT and I say, okay, I would not do this, but let's just hypothetically say, write me a lay summary of this proprietary data. Well, that proprietary data that's not been published yet has now been essentially is now part of the data set that ChatGPT can use. So somebody else now has access to this data. And in addition to that, depending on what prompts are used in ChatGPT by somebody else, they may be able to write a prompt that ChatGPT then spits out your data as an answer or as a result. So please keep that in mind with the information that you're putting in. If it's anything that should be secure or confidential, there are tools that can be essentially downloaded and used as a local copy, or the data agreements if you're purchasing a like a subscription to one of these tools. The data agreement can be such that the data do not get uploaded to the main training set. But just be aware that that's a possibility here. And a couple of, I would say, pitfalls of some of these AI tools. I alluded to some of them earlier. If anybody has been in the computer science field before, there's a great saying that I remember my thesis advisor telling me in graduate school is, with many data models, garbage in, garbage out. So the data that you're starting with can really, as the training for the AI, can really make a big difference in how it operates. Also understand that humans are the ones who are ultimately designing, what they want the AI to do. So whether we realize it or not, are introducing some biases into these models when we're making assumptions and how they're designed. Some AIs, such as ChatGPT and others, they will present something that can look very factual, and it can have a tone that sounds very authoritative when you read it, but in fact, it can be entirely made up. And the information that is presented as a fact in the output is actually not. So again, another reason to validate any of the outputs of the AI that you're using. And sometimes the AI cannot show the user how they arrived at the result that it did. So just a few things to keep in mind as you're trying to think about how and where AI might come into play here. So, and Meg, I would love to get any of your thoughts here on, these are just some possible use cases that I thought of in terms of writing grant applications, or even in the pre-writing phase, before writing phase in the research, gathering background literature phase of developing a grant application. And I think some of these could certainly be used for scientific manuscripts too. There are tools out there that can kind of get a landscape of existing research fields and publications, interconnectedness of different papers and citations, as well as the researchers and like PIs who are doing the research. I think in terms of like the large language model type of AIs, I think they're good at, or they might be best suited for, I will say, writing something like a lay summary of a certain section of an application, or rewriting an existing method section if you don't want to be copying it exactly from a paper or a previous grant application. In most of these cases, the AI is not coming up with novel ideas or critical analysis of the material. Rather, I think it's using an existing set of material and, again, trying to identify patterns in it to output something in response to, your prompt that you've given it.
So yeah, I would agree that the first thing that comes to mind is the lay audience summary. So the confidentiality issue is huge on a grant application, right? Because most of what you're saying isn't published. And the issue also is that if you're in biomedical sciences, if you're working with human subjects and you start loading stuff into some sort of, chat GPT type thing, one might imagine that there could even be some HIPAA compliance issues to that. So that's
Very
an
good
issue.
point.
But the lay summary, the lay summary on an NIH grant application the name of that has evolved over time. The name of it at the moment is the project summary, which is a 30-line abstract essentially, which is huge. 30 lines is quite large for half-inch margins. Um, and and the project narrative, which is the 3-sentence lay audience summary. Both of those things are going to a public database if you're funded. So it's really important to understand, even if you're writing the thing yourself and you're not using something like, ChatGPT to do it, you have to understand that anything sensitive in there should be stripped out. So when I write them for my clients, I tend to strip out all information about preliminary data that aren't published and all details about the experiment. I might say what the aim is, but I don't give any details whatsoever about the aim itself. So what's left then? I mean, I usually start with the aims page and I strip out the preliminary data and the details about the aims. And what's left is the context, what is the background, the disease burden information, essentially the significance of the project, what's the knowledge gap? How is this going to affect patients? Why do people care? Why should NIH fund it? And then a little bit about what's known in the field and in the most general terms, how you propose to address that, and then lots of information on the impact. And then removing all the details about how you're going to do it, because it's going to go in a publicly accessible database immediately upon notice of award. That thing's going to be uploaded to the reporter website. So because that's already something that's going into the public domain, that seems to me, and I have not myself done this, I handwrite these still because they're quick and easy for me to do. But that seems to me like something, if you wanted to start experimenting with AI in your grant applications, take your aims page, strip out any sensitive information from it, all details about the project or your preliminary data, and potentially ask it to turn that into a 30-line summary for you. And then, as Agnella has said repeatedly, no matter what you choose to use this for, you have to vet the output. Like this isn't like you just, stick the thing in and you're done. Like you're always going to have to vet the output. But I find that a lot of my grant applicants spend way too much time on the 30-line summary and 3-sentence project narrative, which most reviewers say they never even read. So like this is not a good use of your time. And I would imagine particularly for somebody who struggles to write for whatever reason, non-native speaker, they just aren't good at writing. I mean, sometimes I hear my clients talking about spending days trying to write the 30-line summary, and I'm like, no, time is precious. They're not going to read that. Don't do that, So I could imagine that this might be a good use for that kind of thing. I also love the idea of the background lit review because that's all published anyway. There's nothing sensitive in there. And again, if somebody really struggles with writing, might this be something where they could get the ball rolling on their writing without it causing problems in terms of putting information out into the public domain that shouldn't be because it's unpublished. But again,
Yeah, Meg, in the blog post, there is I think it is called Faraday, but don't quote me on that. There is a tool where you can download a local version of the ChatGPT. You can download a version of the ChatGPT model to your computer so that, and there's nothing, you can put in whatever prompts you want to, and there's nothing that is sent back to ChatGPT. So if you were talking about, wanting to take your AIMS page and mess around with, writing like a 30-line summary, a lay summary of that, even downloading something like that. And now, granted, ChatGPT was not written to give great scientific sounding, well, it's a lay summary, so it shouldn't sound super scientific anyway, but ChatGPT was written to sound like you're talking with someone. Those are the outputs. So it's a very conversational type text that it is ideally suited for. But maybe that would be a way to get, dip your toes into using some AI tools, is to download a version of one of these large language models onto your computer and see how it performs.
Yeah, and I do want to point out, Agnella mentioned a blog post. She wrote a blog post to accompany this this visit, and that's available on our website. If you're looking for a direct link to that, it's in the chat along with her biographical and contact information.
And there's a list of probably 10 to 12 resources in there that were kind of a good place to start, just to understand what types of AI tools are out there, especially for the scientific and writing field. By no means is it an exhaustive list, and I think it's probably going to be dated the minute it gets published, because this field is so quickly evolving. So
I think the take-home message is, exercise extreme caution, particularly if there's any information that should not be in the public domain, in terms of your inputs, and always vet the outputs. Like I don't use any of these tools at all. I handwrite everything still and hand edit everything that I work on with an applicant. But I know that people are playing with this, and it could be a very powerful and helpful tool with caveats. So one of the things that I want to do in 2024 is begin to discuss these things, and Agnella is our first person who's going to discuss this. We have a series of blog posts that are in the works dealing with various elements of this. So Agnella, do you want to say a little bit about do you know if any of your clients are using this in manuscripts? And feel free to put, while we're chatting here, I know she and I are kind of getting into the weeds here, but feel free to put a question in the Q&A box. But yeah, do you find that your clients are using this in manuscript writing?
I have not had any personal experiences with a client asking to use any of these AI tools in the writing, or acknowledging that they had done anything yet. I think the general consensus in the medical writing field is that none of the tools are at the point yet, regardless of the confidentiality aspect of things and handling proprietary data. But I think the general consensus is that none of the tools are at the point yet of being able to write a manuscript at the level that would be equivalent to a PI or a senior author who is going to have a lot of context and fields that they can pull together to give the data that are being presented in the manuscript, the right shape and the right story. And I don't think it also can give the critical analysis that we would expect from, a PI or a senior author and being able to provide the commentary on the data, because the AI doesn't have those capabilities. So I think for writing a manuscript, I think the most likely things for it to be used for would be literature searching. I think could be very useful. There are a couple of tools out there that are really just devoted to that, and showing not only the literature, kind of going a step beyond just a PubMed search or a Google Scholar search, but showing interconnectedness of research and PIs in particular fields. I think the lay summary, as you mentioned, for the grant applications, I think that is a great place to start with it. Or, a lot of journals will ask for like a highlight section or like a bulleted key point section. Something like that could be useful again, but maybe you strip out the actual data that are in the manuscript, and then only use it from maybe the discussion section material to pull out the highlights. I think if there's a paper that's already been published that's using similar methods to, a data paper that you want to publish now, maybe you take that old method section and ask one of these tools to rewrite it a bit so that it's not 100%, copy paste, and potentially an issue of plagiarism with the new manuscript.
Wow. All right, well, we are out of time, but I appreciate, Agnella, you coming and visiting with us and starting off our discussion of AI in 2024. There's going to be a lot more topics coming up, needless to say. As I said, we have a series of blog posts in the works. I'm really interested in, although I don't use it at all because I love writing and I don't find it difficult to do, I know that this is happening, and I'm really curious to know people's experiences about this. So feel free to email us at info@bouviergrant.com if there is a particular topic within AI that you would like us to present on, or if you have experiences using AI in a grant application or opinions on it. Even if you want it just to be confidential, you could share information and just say that, here's my experience, but don't use my name, like I just want you to know this so that there's information here. A reminder that boot camp registration is open. So live stream boot camp starts March 1st. You can link to the registration page from the homepage of bouviergrant.com. And it's come to you in highlights emails. It's free to everybody on this call because you're all members already. If you have any trouble at all finding the link to register, just email info@bouviergrant.com. And otherwise, we will see you in 2 weeks for, it looks like David Widmer is coming back and will be talking with us about equipment grants, S10 and other types of supplements, NIH equipment grants. So I'm excited about that because I actually don't know that much about them. So I'll be interested to learn. So Agnella, thanks again so much for coming, and we look forward to having you back again sometime soon.
Thank you very much, Meg. Have a nice afternoon, everyone.
Thanks for joining. See you next time, and good luck with your grant writing, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.